Hello, YouTube divers. This is Water Eye 122, and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. So, full disclosure before we get any further, I have been a little bit sick lately, so if my voice sounds a little bit funny throughout these next couple of videos, that's why. All right, got that out of the way. So, today's episode of Magic Metal Mondays, we will be counting down, ranking the 14 studio albums from Swedish progressive metal slash death metal, whatever you want to call it, legends, Opeth. So Opeth is a band that I have put off the map for way too long at this point. Uh, and we're finally going to be ranking them. They are led by, of course, one of the best musicians in at least the last 25 years, Mikkel Ackerfeldt, who is their vocalist as well as one of their two guitar players and their main songwriter. And this guy can write music. I will tell you that his music is so innovative, it's so original, so fresh. It totally gives Opeth their own unique sound, which is something that not a lot of bands have been capable of really doing very well. And as a result, Opeth is by far one of the most beloved and iconic and influential bands in the prog metal genre, and for good reason. They have 14 studio albums, as I said, so we're going to be dividing up this ranking into two videos. We're going to be going from albums 14 through 8 in this video, and then in the next video, we'll be counting down albums from number 7 to number 1. And so let's get started. Number 14, we've got the 2016 album Sorceress. Now, Opeth don't really have a lot of bad albums, but they do have a couple of kind of meh albums, if you will. And in my opinion, Sorceress is definitely the weakest out of all of them. This was the third album in Opeth's infamous, if you will, experimental period where they were playing around with clean vocals, more softer guitar arrangements, and softer orchestration. And all of these albums that they've made pretty much since Heritage have been pretty experimental, and some of them have worked. But then there's Sorceress, which does not work for me. There are a few good songs on the record. Mikhail still sounds absolutely fantastic. I really love his clean vocals. It's really, really awesome. But this is his weakest performance, in my opinion. No debate. My favorite tracks on the record, you have the first title track, Sorceress. There's two Sorceress tracks, but the first one is definitely the best. Don't even try and argue with me. I'm just joking. Then you have Will-O-the-Wisp, which is all right. A Fleeting Glance, which is pretty cool. The opening instrumental, Persephone, is absolutely beautiful. And then my favorite song on the record has to go to Chrysalis. This is definitely one of their more underrated songs. Like, this is definitely one of the best songs in this modern era of Opeth, but it's not really anything like super mind-blowing, as we'll see later on in this ranking. But yeah, for Opeth standards, this is a pretty mid album, if you ask me. I don't really see myself returning back to this one. All right, moving on to number 13, Encado Venenum from 2019. I know I butchered that so bad. I am so sorry. But this is their penultimate album, if you will. And this album is actually really fascinating because this album was released in two different versions. You had basically the same music, but the lyrics changed. You have one version where the lyrics were in English, and another version where the lyrics were in the band's native language, Swedish. I will only be talking about the English version of this album here because I don't know any Swedish, so I would totally be lost if I listened to that version. But the English version is pretty cool. I mean, the music's awesome. You know, Mikkel is great composer. We all know that. And there are a few more tracks that I can enjoy off this record in comparison to Sorceress. You have tracks like Dignity, Heart in Hand, Universal Truth, Continuum, and then Lovelorn Crime, which is my favorite song on the album. And it has another one of the tastiest vocal melodies that Mikkel has ever written, in my opinion. It's a great song and another one of my favorite tracks from this era of Opeth. But yeah, overall, Incado Venenum is okay, but it's nothing really more than okay. Again, we're going to get to some absolutely untouchable records later on in this ranking. But for right now, it comes in here number 13, I'm afraid. Number 12, we've got the 2011 album Heritage. So, Heritage, oh boy, let's talk about Heritage. So, at the time of this album's release, this was very controversial because coming off of such an amazing record like Watershed, the band just completely abandoned the death metal growls and songscapes and techniques that they have done on pretty much all of the previous albums, and they went in for a more jazz rock slash atmospheric rock approach, kind of like what Anathema did in the 2000s, from A Fine Day to Exit all the way up until this very point. And once again, Heritage is another very experimental album, but it's sort of a mixed bag. It's kind of mid. I get why Opeth fans did not like this when it came out. But there are some really cool tracks on the record. You have the closing instrumental, Marrow of the Earth, which is so gorgeous. Then you have Nepenthe. Oof, I probably butchered that as well. Um, but yeah, that's a great track. Then you have Famine, Folklore, which is a very good song that even the old Opeth fans, or at least a lot of them, tend to dig. Like, this is the probably the best, most well known track on the album. Then you have the title track, Heritage, which is a very nice instrumental cut. Then my two favorite songs on the album are Slither and The Devil's Orchard, the latter of which is my favorite song on the record. And again, another one of my favorite modern day Opeth songs. I really love how heavy yet jazzy this song is. I love its blend of like classic Black Sabbath era heavy metal and early 1960s jazz, somewhere around there, like, or 70s jazz. I love that combination. And these are really the tracks where the experimentations work. Um, Everywhere else just doesn't, and that's what's preventing me from ranking it any higher. So, with that said, Heritage comes in here at number 12. Now we're moving on to number 11. This one might be a little bit controversial. We're going all the way back to the very start, to their 1995 debut album, Orchid. This album is just pure death metal, black metal goodness, if you're a fan of that. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because I'm not really a huge fan of death metal and black metal. I'm more of a power metal guy, as you can see right here. But I gotta give this album credit. This record is super evil. Probably the most evil sounding record that they've ever made, or at least in this very early era of the band. You have a lot of great epic songs off of here, and Opeth have so many amazing epic songs. You have In Mist She Was Standing, Forest of October, which is just so awesome. Then you have two amazing instrumentals with Silhouette and Requiem. And then you have Under the Weeping Moon and The Apostle in Triumph, that the latter of which is my favorite song on the record, and one of my many favorite Opeth epic songs. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, Orchid is a very good album. Like, from here on out, all these albums are at least very good, which makes my job of ranking these albums all the more difficult. So, yeah, let's move on. So next up at number 10, we've got the 1998 album, My Arms, Your Hearse. So this is the band's third studio album, And this is really where they start to experiment with more clean sounding vocals and more melodic riffs instead of just doing like full blown death metal, black metal, atmospheric stuff that they did on their first two albums. And this record is actually kind of confusing because I do like it more than the debut, but in comparison to their sophomore studio album Morningside, which we'll get to later, this record just kind of feels like the perfect marriage between those two albums. You want death metal growls, this album's got you covered. You want amazing clean vocals, this album's got you covered. You want amazing atmospheres, this album's got you covered. There's a lot of great songs on this album. You have Demon of the Fall, which is one of the most evil songs they've ever done. Then you have When, the Amen Corner, Epilogue, Credence, and then April Ethereal, the opening track, if you will. Um, One of my favorite songs from Opeth, without a doubt. I absolutely love April Ethereal, um, especially for those harmonic riffs near the very end. Oh my goodness, it's so good. But yeah, overall, My Arms, Your Hearse, another good album. But we're going to get into the best of the best here. So let's get this party started. So next up is Pale Communion from 2014. Yeah, this record absolutely blew away my expectations. This is another record that many Opeth fans aren't really a huge fan of. And unlike the previous album, Heritage, I don't understand the hate for this record. This easily has some of the band's best performances since Watershed, in my opinion. Mikkel sounds the best, or at least one of the times at his best since Watershed. Um, and the tracks all feel very inspired and actually well executed. Like the experiments on here actually work. You have Elysian Woes, Eternal Rains Will Come, Moon Above, Sun Below, which is another one of my favorite epics from them. Then you have River, which is absolutely gorgeous, Voice of Treason, and then my favorite song on the album has to go to Faith and Others. This is another one of my favorite Opeth songs, not just from this era, but in general. I love Faith and Others, especially those absolutely sweeping guitars, and Mikkel's awesome clean vocals. But yeah, other than that, Pale Communion is a very good and very underrated album. Definitely the band's most underrated record, in my opinion. All right, now for the final album we'll be talking about in this video, we're going to be talking about their most recent album, 2024's The Last Will and Testament. Concept album taking place after World War One. Tells the story about a wealthy conservative patriarch rediscovering some Old Testaments that uncover a lot of his family's dark secrets. And as a result, 7 out of the 8 tracks on this album have section symbols and are just numbered. They don't have official titles. All of that information credited to Mikkel Ackerfold himself. So thank you for that, Mikkel. But yeah, there are a lot of great tracks on here. This is easily the best album they've made since Watershed. And it contains a lot of my favorite Opeth tracks. And of course, the elephant in the room, let's address it. The death metal growls are back on this record. Yeah, this is the first album since Watershed to feature death metal growls from Mikkel. And honestly, after 4 straight records of them not being present in Opeth's sound, it is so refreshing to hear him growl again. This is coming from someone who's not a huge death metal fan. But yeah, I mean, The Last Will and Testament's got a lot of great tracks on here. My favorites are paragraphs 1, 3, 4, 5, 7. And then my favorite track on the record has to go to the closing track, A Story Never Told. This is the only song on the album with an actual title. It's not actually named after a paragraph, but yeah, this is definitely the best song the band has made since Watershed, in my opinion. and it's one of my favorite tracks from the band. Another one of the so many amazing tracks from Opeth. But yeah, Last Will and Testament, fantastic album. Comes in here number 8. All right, so with that said, that concludes part 1 of my Opeth album rankings. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is Water Diver 122 signing out, ready to dive into more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.